Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this petition hearing. A few rules of the road to start with. You'll be pleased to know we're not expecting a fire drill tonight, but in the event that the alarm does go off, there are a selection of councillors I see in the room and officers and myself here who will direct you to the nearest exit. I would ask you, if you have well, everybody has a mobile, if you would be kind enough to check that it is at least on silent. I should explain for those who can't see this and for anyone viewing at home, because we do have, don't we? Yes, we do. Where's the camera these days? Oh, over there, yes. We do have the ability to watch this at home on YouTube, and there may be those doing so. I'm Councillor Jonathan Bianco. I'm the Cabinet Member for Property, Highways and Transport. On my right is David Knowles, the Head of Transport and Town Centre Projects, and on my left is Ryan Dell, the Democratic Services Officer, who will ensure that we do things in the correct order and make notes. The agenda is as shown before. I will invite Ms. Selly up in a moment to speak. But let me just explain a couple of other points. Point one is that because we are live streaming on YouTube, anyone that wishes to speak will have to come up and sit at this desk and speak into that microphone so that those sitting at home can hear. If they don't, they won't, so to speak. Secondly, the decisions that I make tonight are final, in the sense that there is no court of appeal. I may make decisions, I may not. I'm not wishing to prejudge at this moment before I've heard what you have to say. And thirdly, in terms of how it will operate, I will invite each of the speakers, the organisers of the petition here, to speak for up to 5 minutes. They don't have to speak for 5 minutes, but they have up to 5 minutes. I may ask them questions. I will then invite any ward councillors present to speak as well, if they so wish. And I may then take further points from other members of the public who are here. Depending on what they have to say, I would ask any members who are going to take part to not simply repeat what we've already heard. And that is how we work it. So to start with then, Miss Celli, good, come and sit here. When you're ready, press the big button on the bottom of the microphone stand, and your 5 minutes, or up to 5 minutes, will start. Councillor Riley, you're coming as her guardian?
Yes.
Splendid.
Councillor Riley standing in for Councillor Hawthorne, who's been with me since the very start of this petition.
Splendid. Well, he's not here. I've had a note from him, and anyway, when you're ready, press the button.
So first of all, thank you for your time, and thank you for Councillor Riley for stepping in Councillor Hawthorne's place this evening. I do have a fear of public speaking, but I've temporarily overcome that as I'm here representing the plus minus 320 children aged from 7 to 11 years old from the Whiteheath Junior School with regards to having a zebra crossing installed nearby the school. While the officer was writing his report, did he at any time have the opportunity to stand in Ladygate Lane to witness firsthand what drop-off and pick-up is like for the children going to school? Councillor Hawthorne met up with me on many instances and therefore has a good understanding of the petitioner's concerns regarding the safety of children crossing this very busy road. The safety of children crossing is particularly prevalent at pick-up, when most children come out of school all at once at around 3:30 p.m. It's not like drop-off, where there is a wider window in terms of time frame to get to school. It is at pick-up that there is an extremely high density of children crossing the road to get home all at once. Parents and or carers are parked on double yellow lines. In some instances are double parked in the road, hence blocking the road. They are parked on curbs, blocking residents' driveways. In short, it is total mayhem. On a more positive note, the officer has mentioned other security measures that could be considered. My response to number 3 in the officer's report, a safe place to cross would also be beneficial for patients visiting the doctor's surgery, many of whom are elderly. My response to number 5 in the officer's report, if the zebra crossing, which is located directly opposite the infants' school main entrance, had been built halfway between the two schools so that children from both schools could benefit from a safe crossing in the road, we might not be having this meeting right now. It would have been a cost-effective and fairer way of providing the children of both schools to get to and from school. Speaking from personal experience, it is not a practical solution for the children from Whiteheath Junior to walk all the way to the entrance of the infant school, to then cross the zebra crossing, and then have to make their way all the way back to their school. During the school run, every minute counts. Walking 250 meters to the pedestrian crossing and then all the way back again, especially with a younger child attending the school, is not convenient at all and would add about 7 to 10 minutes to the school run in the mornings, depending on the child's age. Driving around the borough, including Ruislip, Uxbridge, Ickenham, Pinner, among others, I've noticed that Whiteheath Junior School is one of only a couple, if not the only school, with a zebra crossing close to the school. My response to number 6 in the officer's report, the safety concerns in this e-petition are not with the school's separate dedicated entrance, Whiteheath Avenue, but having to cross one of the main arteries into school, Ladygate Lane, to get to the separate entrance, where there are currently little or no safety measures for children crossing this busy road. It is wonderful to hear of all the great road safety initiatives in Whiteheath Avenue, but again, these are predominantly concentrated in Whiteheath Avenue. With regards to the voluntary one-way system, yet again, a great initiative. And although parents and or carers are encouraged to agree to this one-way system, it cannot be enforced. And we all know that if something cannot be enforced, it is not foolproof. Unfortunately, members of the public who drive up and down this road are not aware of the voluntary one-way system, so you will always find vehicles driving in the opposite direction during the school run. I would like to reiterate that the area of concern for the petitioners is not when you get to Whiteheath Avenue, where the school's entrance is located, it's crossing one of the busy main arteries to get to school. As I've previously mentioned, a lot of vehicles... well, that's basic. Hopefully I've got my point across, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Riley.
Thank you. I've also got a statement which you've, I think, already seen from Councillor Cawthorne.
Cawthorne, yes.
But as the humble replacement for Councillor Cawthorne, perhaps I can add a little bit more. When I was in your seat some time ago, Councillor Bianco, dealing with these sorts of petitions and certainly dealing with the issues in Ladygate Lane and the two schools, we put in a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit past the two schools, which is regularly ignored. And on many, many occasions, especially from the caretaker for both schools, I used to get asked to go down and watch what was happening, and it really was quite mayhemic down there, as the petitioner says, with very difficult parking and dropping off and behaviour by parents going to both schools, which also meant that it was quite dangerous for children to cross at any stage. And you saw people, frankly, taking their life in their hands, taking their children, especially to the junior school, which doesn't have a crossing or any sort of safety crossing at that point. So the request for some sort of safety crossing a bit further up. I know it sounds in geographical terms as if it's not very much, but it makes a great big difference because you're talking about a lot of other children trying to get to school, and the reason it's been asked for between the schools and Marlborough is that tends to be the area where cars are pretty much building up speed, even though they come to the 20. There's been a lot of work in that road in Ladygate Lane because we've got the lorry restrictions, we've got the speed limit, but still, because you've got two schools there, it's amazingly busy, and I know that Mr. Knowles has also been down there and knows the area very, very well. So really what's being asked for is as safe a crossing as possible for children and for adults bringing their children to school, because we've had so many near misses down there. It really is very dangerous. So having something formalised, a crossing that's formalised at a safety point will be very, very welcome, and it's something that myself, Councillor Cawthorne, and indeed Councillor Smallwood, the third of our councillors, I don't say in hierarchy at all, but just the third, have been asking for. So perhaps if I can read Councillor Cawthorne's statement that you've got, so that it's on the record. He says, unfortunately, I'm unable to be present to speak on the item owing to Deputy Mayor duties, which of course he's undertaking. I'm grateful to my colleague Councillor Riley for doing so. I met the petitioner, Mrs. Botello, on site some months ago to discuss her concerns and those of other parents regarding the hazards of crossing Ladygate Lane with children on school days heading from the general direction of Berry Street. I acknowledge the extensive works which have been carried out in recent years elsewhere in Ladygate Lane. I've already referred to those to help, but there is no doubt in my mind that the concerns raised by Mrs. Botello are valid, and then Councillor Cawthorne goes on to make some observations about the way in which engagement is dealt with, and hopes that that can continue. And he finishes with this: noting the third officer recommendation, I hope we may be able to manage some dialogue with the petitioners in terms of what might be possible to alleviate their concerns. Many thanks for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. At this point, Mr. Knowles, do you want to add anything, or not to you?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much for your testimony. I do know the area well, as Councillor Riley said, and it is a challenge. It's always a challenge when it's near a school. It's an emotive subject, both for the school community and the residents who live nearby. And I noticed you had a petition. You got 33 people, I think it was, supported it. The only thing I would observe, and it's not a criticism, but nobody on that petition actually lives in Ladygate Lane, so that gives us a slight dilemma. So obviously, whatever we propose to take place in Ladygate Lane, assuming we do, obviously needs to have the buy-in and support of the people who live there, because obviously it affects them as much as it affects the people coming twice a day during term time and causing, as you rightly say, mayhem. The crossing that went in further up the road near the infant school, that was about, I would say, about 10, 15 years ago, something like that. I remember that because I put it in, so it's my fault. At the time, that was the issue, was the crossing in a similar nature, but for the infant school. And it's worth noting, I think, that at the time, the issues at the junior school were not quite the same extent. In Whiteheath Avenue, they certainly were, and you made the point that a lot of the work that we've done is in Whiteheath Avenue. So there is the School Keep Clear, which is camera enforced. There's the voluntary one-way working, which I think seems to work quite well. You're right, sometimes other people don't know about it, but if the school community know about it. I'd also say the school themselves, and I don't know to what extent you've had the dialogue with the head and all the people. Okay, they work very well with us. So I mean, it's a commendable reputation that the school have, and indeed they've been before Councillor Bianco in the past and received various awards, because we want to try and encourage as much as we can sustainable transport. We realise you said every second counts. unfortunately, that's what unfortunately contributes to what we have to recognise is atrocious behaviour by a small minority. Parking across driveways, doing U-turns in the middle of the junction, all manner of things. I think the issue we need to think about, and we need to look at, we need to do more work with you and with the school, and we need to involve at some point the ward councillors and the residents of Ladygate Lane, who I say have been sort of not been engaged in this so far, is where and what we could do. There are some things that we can explore, such as we are already looking at the extent of the 20 mile per hour zone. We have discussed previously with Councillor Bianco the possibility of extending that because the traffic calming already exists along there. So that's something we can explore. If we were to consider that, we'd need to do a formal consultation. It affects the people who live in Ladygate Lane. Everyone would be able to contribute towards that, and so Councillor Bianco would take a considered view once he'd heard all of that work that had been done. Similarly, if we were to consider a zebra crossing, and I'm sure Councillor Bianco will have a few words to say about his thoughts on zebra crossings and how people do and do not use them from time to time, then the question would be where we would put it. The location you've sort of hit upon, which is the obvious one, is between those two junctions that are nearby, Whiteheath and Marlborough. There is, as you know, a raised table already there in between.
Councillor, SUVs are built for rough terrain, and SUVs in particular that we're afraid
You'll need to put your microphone on if you want to speak, but I'd rather you didn't speak.
Well, I'll come to a point and I'll finish, and I think Councillor Bianco will want to say a few, and obviously we'll bring you back. I apologise. I must have been knocked off that. Apologise for that. There's a private driveway which gives us a slight challenge in terms of locations, but we're not there yet. We're hearing from you today. We're going to have some discussion. Councillor Bianco will make some further judgment calls on what we do, and then I think we'll take it from there. Really, I think that's probably the best thing. If I'll stop at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. I hear what you say. Mr. Knowles knows me well, and my view on zebra crossings is very mixed. I'm disappointed to hear about the state of parking down there during school pick-off and drop-off and pick-up. And I would hope that maybe we can do something about parking enforcement down there to encourage, through the provision of tickets, people to behave more responsibly. Certainly when it comes to double parking and parking on double yellow lines. I have concerns from that were we to introduce a zebra crossing, that they would simply park on the zigzag lines, as I've witnessed in many other places. The wider concern I have about zebra crossings in general is that unless one is incredibly fortuitous in locating the zebra crossing in just the right place, people will continue to cross the road where they want to, albeit that the zebra crossing is 15 yards in that direction or in that direction, and I've witnessed that many times. And the cost of the zebra crossings is not insignificant, and the money comes from TfL, doesn't it?
Generally speaking, yes. Yeah.
So we rely on TfL, Transport for London, for our funding for zebra crossings, and they're not always as generous as they could be. So there may be a waiting list if we decide to go that route. Speeding, of course, in Ladygate Lane is not a council matter, it's a police matter. The police seem incredibly reluctant to enforce the speed limit anywhere, and certainly even more reluctant to enforce the 20 mile an hour zone. In fact, I say to people when we're asked for 20 mile an hour zones, I tell people, you do realise that they're not enforced. So it is, if you like, a bit of guidance. Legally, they're supposed to do it, but in actuality, if nobody's going to stop you or give you a ticket, then people treat it to a certain degree with a pinch of salt. So I do accept your comment in that regard. There are already speed tables in the street. which is another of my bête noires, but as you've got them, I won't come along and take them out. But there are already speed tables in the street. But I do think it's worth looking at again. So I'm not saying no, we won't do anything. Mr. Knowles pointed on one other thing, which is that the school has been very proactive in trying to get its children and their parents to behave responsibly. When it comes to dropping off their kids and picking up their kids. Sometimes it works better than others. I've been to schools in the borough where they've got a really good formula working, and the parents stick with it, and the neighbours also stick with it because they're aware of it. Ladygate Lane, of course, is a bit more of a cut-through, so it is, you know, there are a lot of people who use Ladygate Lane, myself included from time to time, who simply use it to get from A to B and not because they live down there. So that is, it's much harder to get people to operate a one-way system or something like that on that basis. There are things we can do. The school's very attuned. We gave them a grant this year, as Mr. Knowles stated, towards to run a cycle to school campaign, and our cycle officers support them on an annual basis, delivering sessions and such like. And they've taken part in the Living Streets Walk to School challenge. So they are very, as schools go, they are more proactive than quite a number in our borough. So that's a positive point. A small aside, I mean, obviously, the issue of where we place, if we were to, a zebra crossing is surrounded by also the fact that you can't have it too near a junction and all those sorts of things. But also, of course, it does come back to the point of that you will find that when we consult people in the road, people are often very keen on the generality of a zebra crossing, but when someone actually says, yeah, by the way, it's outside your house, or the zigzag lines are outside your house and you will no longer be able to park there, then that sign up to the idea goes out the window. So there is a balance here between all of these conflicting issues. I'm pleased to say that from police statistics, at least, to date, and I touch wood on this basis, there have not been any serious accidents. They may have been only a smidge away, but so far so good. The recommendations I have before me, there are three. The first one is to meet the petitioners and listen to them. The second is to note the work that we've already done in respect of the school's travel and road safety team, which we call STARS. And the third, which is probably the one that interests you, is that subject to the outcome of the above, ask officers to undertake a further detailed investigation on the possibility of a zebra crossing or other measures that we might take. I will certainly look at enforcement. I think we should get we can get our enforcement teams down there a few times, and
you can make another recommendation if you
and hand out. Perhaps I could add a recommendation to that effect. To hand out some tickets and discourage people parking on double yellow lines or even double parking, because that isn't acceptable anywhere in the borough. So, why they should have special leave in Ladygate Lane to do it, I don't know. So I can certainly look at that. I would also recommend, if you're concerned about speed, to speak to your local policing team and see if you can encourage them, and I'm sure Councillor Riley will be keen to help you in this matter, see if you can encourage them to come out, because periodically they get their hands on a speed gun and will come out and use it. But it's not something the council has any direct control over, but it may be worth taking up with them. Now, before I close, I don't know if the ladies and gentlemen in the audience, if any of them are here for this subject or not. No, fine. In that case, those are the 3 or 4 recommendations now. We will keep you informed, Ms. Shelley, of how and what transpires, and I'm sure Councillors Riley, Cawthorne and Smallwood will hound me periodically for some sort of update.
Thank you.
Okay? Next one is Grosvenor Avenue, Hayes. Is there a Mr. or Mrs. Hall? Well, one or both of you are welcome to come up, and one or both of you may speak. You get 5 minutes between you. And Councillor Davis can follow. Or you can go now. Councillor Davis, you want to sit up there, you feel free. I'm feeling in a sort of expansive mood tonight, Councillor Davis, so I'm quite happy to have you sit there. Right. Mrs. Hall, I assume. Please feel free to start when you are ready. Please press the button.
My name is Mandy Hall, and I'm here to represent the residents of Grosvenor Avenue tonight. We're increasingly concerned about the speed of vehicles travelling down Grosvenor Avenue. People seem to be using it as a shortcut from Kingshill Avenue through to Lansbury, avoiding the traffic lights with Lansbury and Kingshill Avenue for various reasons, time, the ULIS cameras and things. So they think that they can charge down our road basically and avoid that. There's been a few incidents recently. A man was fixing the telegraph pole and a speeding van caught the wire and pulled him. Lucky enough he had his harness on, but it actually dislocated his shoulder. Another dog walker of ours was crossing the road and a speeding car caught the lead, dragged the dog up the road and caused £8,000 worth of vet bills. And at the junction of Weymouth Road and Owl Road, there is always skirmishes there. And recently our neighbour had his car written off because a car just pulled out of Weymouth Road when he was coming down the road, didn't look at all, and wrote his car off. The entrance to Grosvenor playing fields is actually at that junction as well, where youngsters are being dropped off to go and play football. There's dog walkers, the allotments are there, and it's also the entrance to the Hillingdon Trail, so people do park to go and enjoy themselves. The worst times in the mornings that we've noticed really are between 6 and 9, then again at 3 and 7, and then later in the evening when we have the more boy racer types whizzing up and down the road. So it's not very nice really. So the officer's report, there was just a few things that I needed a reply to. So number 3 was we said it's not only residents parking but the parents park in the street that are going to Grosvenor playing fields. What we would like as far as traffic calming measures, we would be quite interested in having a restrictions really rather than tables or anything like that. So we'd like to try and slow the traffic down. We felt around, if you're travelling up the road from Kingshill before the junction of Weymouth, to try and slow the traffic so traffic can come out of Weymouth. And again there's a nasty corner at the bottom which even though there's double yellow lines on there, it's still hazardous really because you can't see round the road and the people tend to put their foot down and they're going too fast. And I know for a dog walker friend has already had his car shoved into the neighbour's garden because of that. We also sit on the Met Police ward panel and this has been discussed there about the speeding, and one of the PCs, Phil, he's actually done a course now with a speed gun thing, so we've tried to get that as well. So I think we're at the stage where we've tried to do as much as we can. The 65 signatures that we got, we tried to get different sections of the road if you look at the numbers, so hopefully that we covered most of it. And they are sort of like young families around there as well, which is why not a lot of people have come tonight because they're school children and things. So that's us.
Thank you. I know the spot reasonably well, and I've delivered things for young Councillor Davis on occasions around there, so I know it well enough. And I've also been in the park area there. Can I just be clear? I'll ask Councillor Davis to come in just a second. When you say restrictions, you're talking about width restrictions, are you? Yeah. That's what you mean?
Yeah, or
We'll talk about it in a minute.
We'll talk about it in a minute, but I just wanted to be clear in my mind. Councillor Davis, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you. I've prepared, as I'm not great at public speaking. It's a privilege to speak today on behalf of the residents of Grosvenor Avenue regarding the petition of traffic calming measures. The petition has the full support of both the local community and the Safer Neighbourhoods team, who have already carried out several speed operations on the road, undersourcing the seriousness of this issue. In addition to this, Grosvenor Avenue has experienced a number of accidents, particularly at the lower end, so on the bend, which was already mentioned, where several cars have crashed through residents' windows. The alarming pattern, coupled with the recent incidents where a telecom engineer was injured by the speed of vehicles coming down Grosvenor Avenue, highlights that the ongoing danger of the speeding vehicles pose, not only to the residents but to those working in the area. We cannot afford to wait for any more accidents. We need to take some sort of action, and meaningful action. It's also important to note that the road serves a main travel route for special needs transport heading towards Hedgewood School. The safety of vulnerable passengers is at risk. It only takes a speeding car to crash into one of them coaches, and it could cause significant harm to the children. Given the specific challenges on the road, I recognise that traditional speed tables may not be suitable due to the concerns about vibration, noise, etc. Therefore, I would propose installing chicanes which would slow traffic effectively without causing these issues. Additionally, possibly recommending width restrictions at the junction of Grosvenor Avenue and Weymouth Road to reduce the number of large vehicles using the road as a cut-through, and also cars that are using it cutting through from Kingshill Avenue, avoiding the traffic lights. To gain a clearer picture of the problem, I also suggest installing the traffic monitoring cables not only down Grosvenor Avenue but on Weymouth Road, so you can get the volume of cars that are actually travelling down there at speed, because they are daisy chaining through. With the support of the SNT, they have implemented some traffic measures there without using the gun, because they wasn't fully qualified at the time, but they have had high visibility police in there, and it has had a good impact. So we have had the support of the SNT, and they've done a really good job. But I really, really am concerned that our residents are at risk, because it is a very busy road. There's a large number of cars on both sides, causing blind spots, and it only takes one person to go over the speed limit that could cause harm to one of our residents. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Mr. Knowles, do you want to add anything at this point?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, first of all, well done. Commendable. That was a really good petition that you presented, and also very impressed with the work that you've already done. You worked with the SNT on the police panel, because if you heard the petition presentation earlier on, one of the points that I'm stealing Councillor Bianco's thunder now, but working with the police on enforcement and catching the miscreants that are doing the speeding is so important, and you've already done that, and that's good. And the evidence that they provide, and we must get in touch with them, helps make the case. It's like all these things, it's finding the evidence that supports the argument that you're making, and if you've got the police on board already, 10 out of 10, that's fantastic. You make the point about special needs transport. It's a good thing. I've made a particular note of that. In terms of some of the issues I picked up on, you've mentioned a bend where there's an issue about speeding. It might be some yellow lines perhaps on the bend. Improved visibility might be something. Also, you mentioned the crossroads, such as it is at Weymouth, and I think maybe we can look at perhaps building that out slightly to discourage the parking on the corner, again making visibility better. I think, not to prejudge it, I think it's having heard from you what the issues are, we take that away and we do some more work. We present it then ultimately with the input of your ward councillors as well, for Councillor Bianco to consider, and then hopefully something comes out of it, out of the sausage machine, if you like. I do note your point about speed tables, and I think that's well considered, because some people like them, some people hate them. We have had situations where they've gone in, and then somebody come along afterwards and said, because the skip lorry's going over them, can you please take them out again? So it's a balance to be had. I think we need to look at the arrangements and some ideas. So we'll, subject to what Councillor Bianco says, we'll work with you and your ward councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. Sorry, Councillor Nelson West, I realise you're a ward member for there. Did you want to speak?
No, there was only thinking what David said and what the petition said. It's going over the same thing, but I'm back and forth exactly.
Right.
As well.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I mean, what Mr. Knowles has just said, I certainly support. I think the fact that you've got the Met lined up with their, well, hopefully shortly with their gun, will be very useful. And it's surprising how word gets around. You know, if they can come out a couple of times and clock a few people, then that often spreads the word, because you never know when they're hiding around the corner ready to do you. One thing I wasn't quite clear on, and perhaps you can just elucidate. It's used as a rat run. Can you just tell me from where to? I'm just trying to get a better picture of where it runs from and to.
So they travel past the Brookhouse Rugby Club, as if they were coming up to the Brookhouse pub and take the immediate right down Grosvenor Avenue, and then come to Weymouth, and they either turn a left there or they head straight down to the bottom and come onto Langdown, and that has been a real issue. I think Mr. Knowles will know, over the years we've actually had to install safety bollards in front of people's property on Langdown. Because
and is that happening in both directions?
Yes, in both directions, because they can also cut through to miss the top lights. So the only traffic lights are at the top of Lansbury and the Brookhouse Junction. Yeah, no, I assumed that was the case. I just wanted a clarification on that front. Obviously, if we put in, this is all something that officers will look into. But if we do put in width restrictions, it can obviously impact deliveries to people. It can impact. Well, you were talking about special school transport. So whether it would impact that or not, I don't know. We'd have to be careful about the width of said restrictions, and of course, the wider they are, the less of a discouragement they are. Councillor, just to come back on that point, there is a number of other routes that them special needs transport can go down. Kingshill Avenue, Adelphi Way, Gossett. There is a number of veins that they could, if their vehicles were too big, make ways down. That's why I suggested the Weymouth Road Junction. Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, look, I think the only thing I can sensibly suggest is there are two recommendations here. I don't know whether, well, I think they're wide enough. One is to listen to you. That's always the first recommendation. Listen to the petitioner. And the second one is, I think certainly it would be worth putting some speed survey equipment down. And in both roads sounds like a plausible idea. It will, if nothing else, it will confirm that there are A, the number of vehicles that are going, and B, what sort of vehicles, and finally what speed they're travelling at. It's quite, for what is very simple equipment, it's quite easy. It's quite sophisticated, the results you get out. Mr. Knowles has a plan which is conveniently. You have a plan too. You've marked on there where you think. Them at the beginning. Fantastic. Well, you're one ahead, you see. So when we finish, which indicate where the best places to put these things are. So I think, subject to that, we can then look at what we can do, whether width restrictions are the answer, or a chicane, or more than one chicane, and see what happens. There is always the issue of, as I think you probably heard me say in the previous petition. And people are in favour of it until someone says, "Oh, by the way, it's outside your house." But hopefully we can overcome that issue, and obviously we'll have to consult with the residents of the street, which you kindly petitioned for us, which is always helpful, and see where we get. But I think yes, there's no reason why we can't look at this. I'll move those two recommendations if you're happy with that, and you will hear from us further, and no doubt. The councillors present will hassle me, as the other ones will, to get some sort of response. Don't expect it tomorrow, but we will keep you informed of how things progress. Thank you.
And you've marked up the plan.
Right, so, sorry, I better put the, you've heard all the preamble, Mr. Costick. Please feel free to spend your 5 minutes, press the button, the big button here, and then we'll have a chat about it.
Well, thank you for having me here. It's, having the petition, getting enough petition people to sign it was great. So the reason for the petition was I live in the first house off of the Cowley Road into Chiltern View Road, and about 50 yards up the road is a width restriction. So our part of the road is a one-way street, which then goes into the two-way street of Chiltern View Road. And the issue that we have is that people seem to use the traffic lights as a bit of a game of chicken. Or a starting point for a race up Chiltern View Road. So they will come across from the Cowley Mill Road, across the traffic lights, and straight up Chiltern View Road at speed. And in fact, I walked up Chiltern View Road to come here tonight, and a car went past me at one hell of a lick. So enough to actually move clothing as I'm walking down the road. So it happens on a regular basis. Although we have the width restriction and it is a one-way part in that part of the street, drivers tend to ignore that and come down the one-way street towards Cowley Road on a regular basis. It is. I have questioned it before, and I have been told by the police that it is well signposted, which actually it is, but people just choose to ignore it. And what with the children from Whitehall School and the children from the Uxbridge High, there are children spilling out all over the road. And I know one child, it was on the Cowley Road on that junction, was hurt a number of years ago. So the cars do just go down there at way too fast. So really, it's not as complicated as the other ones we've heard tonight, but pretty much that's it. I noticed as I walked up the road today, all of the parking is down as you walk up the road on the right-hand side of the road, which leaves a lovely alleyway for cars to speed down. I don't know whether there's opportunity to put effectively, as we've been talking about tonight, like a chicane on the other side of the road, so the cars have to do a slight turn, which would hopefully slow them down. That's pretty much it. Grateful.
Mr. Knowles, do you want to say something at this point? I've got a couple of questions, but you crack on first.
I'll make a couple of points. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Costick. You're quite right, there's a section that's one way, and it's interesting you're saying that it's, in your experience, quite often abused, and the police have commented on the signage, and yes, I think the signage is pretty adequate, but of course people are what they do. They're in a hurry to get somewhere, and they think that they won't get caught. One of the recommendations that we obviously have, you've heard, just like with the last one, will be to do some surveys. Surveys with those tubes that are across the road are, the police will tell you, the most reliable and the best sort, because there's nobody standing there with a sort of a fluorescent jacket with a camera. They're discreet. They're across the road, and they can tell you speed, time of day, type of vehicle, and everything. And so, I think it would be interesting for us when we get to that stage about talking about surveys, subject to what Councillor Bianco decides, to see to what extent that abuse is real. Because if it's significant, there are recourses that are open to the council, such as camera enforcement of moving traffic contraventions. But we would, as a council, it's for members to decide ultimately this, but we want to know there was good evidence, because basically it's not a profit-making exercise, but the point is these cameras cost a lot of money. You put them in, you want them to earn their corn, to some extent, shall we say. So there needs to be evidence of that, which would be useful to hear. And then the only other point I was going to say is you mentioned the fact that parking largely takes place on one side of the road, and that means that there's almost like a corridor that goes through. The only thing I would say is to change the arrangements of parking is always possible, but involves, in that case, I suspect, moving it across outside somebody's house to cross the road, and people obviously, if we do make changes or propose changes like that, we consult the people in the road, and there will be a range of views, as you probably heard. And people say yes and they say no, and if outside their house. So we would need to look at that in the balance in due course. But I think that's probably enough from me. Obviously, Councillor Bianco's got some questions.
Yeah,
for
thank you. Yes. Well, my question to you actually, Mr. Knowles, was do you remember the? I mean, when was this bit made one way, and what was the particular thinking around that?
I think it was probably before. People were using horse and carts, I think, in those days. But I think the idea was to deal with rat running. That was the issue. Clearly, otherwise people were coming up Whitehall and coming out through the bottom. But you're saying that, despite the restriction, they're still doing it because it's their route to Cowley Road. So that was the reason for it doing it when it was done. However many years ago, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
Could we make the whole road one way the other way? Would that make life easier or more difficult?
I would say when it comes to one-way working, be careful what you wish for. Yes. There are a number of issues with that. One is it affects everybody in terms of deliveries and what have you, and so therefore you have to have everybody on board, and people may feel that that's what they would like to see. The only thing I'd also say, with one-way working in an entire street, one of the side effects, the unintended side effects, is the speeds go up because everyone realises there's nobody coming the other way. So I can go up along 50 or 60 along this road because I know there won't be a car or a truck coming towards me. So it's a dilemma.
You're absolutely right. It was a semi-facetious suggestion. I've made it a few times when people have asked for things and don't like the response. Look, I think a speed survey has got to be the first answer because it will confirm what you already believe to be true. But then we've got it in right. We've got it, the evidence. We've got the evidence. I like what you say about moving the parking around because you could create a natural chicane, and there is no doubt that in streets where cars are parked at sort of different points across the road, it does slow traffic invariably. And I'm thinking of a street near where I live where this happens all the time, and you simply can't speed down there because you have to manoeuvre between the cars. And if there's something coming the other way, then you've got to do a lot more giving way. So I can see that is something that we look at. Well, it could be one of the solutions as part of a wider piece. I'm not, as you may have gathered, I'm not a great fan of humps and bumps. Because of the noise, the pollution, the fact that everybody's up for it until they find out it's outside their house, and all those sorts of things, the vibrations, and the fact that depending on what sort of hump or bump you put in, as one of the earlier petitioners said, if you've got a 4x4, you just drive over it as though it's not there anyway. But there are solutions we can look at. But I think the first thing to do is to do a survey. That will give us a better clue. Mr. Knowles and his team will look at what options there are, and we can look at what we can conveniently do. It's interesting that you see this has obviously been made into it's got a parking management scheme in it. And again, I say to people, well, of course, when you put a parking management scheme in, it removes a lot of the cars, and guess what happens? People drive faster. And I don't recall this street from before the parking management scheme. Maybe you do. I'm guessing that before the parking management scheme, there would have been a lot more cars parked. Please.
Bizarrely enough, the parking in the road was exactly the same before the parking management, and the shocking thing back then, people would play chicken the other way, down the wrong way to the one-way street, across the lights. And there were some abortive attempts, which were quite shocking.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think clearly the positioning of the strips will be material. Mr. Knowles has a lovely little plan here, so perhaps when we're finished, which we will almost shortly, you could come up and give your views on where to put the strips, and we'll take it from there. We try and be helpful. We can't, unfortunately, provide miracles. And the main activity at this juncture seems to be the wholesale desecration of the ULEZ cameras, which I see at that junction has happened at least once, if not more. I withhold my views. Right, so there are two recommendations. The first one, as usual, is to meet and listen to the petitioners, and the second is to decide if officers should commission a independent speed and traffic survey, which I do agree, and then look at what you might do. That isn't actually stated in that petition, but I'm assuming it follows automatically. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I mean,
the first step.
Yes, so the first step is do the survey, let's find out what the issues are, and then we come up with some recommendations. We always involve the ward councillors, and we take things on a regular basis to Councillor Bianco, who say, well, that idea is rubbish, or that idea's got some wings, and then we test the water. If we are making changes in the road, we will consult you. We are legally obliged to do so.
And then we just have to look for the money. But there we go. That's a minor thing.
Yeah.
Mr. Costick, thank you for coming. Are those agreed? Those agreed.